All right, so what are we making a video on today?
Huh? Huh? Huh?
Oh man, what is this garbage? Hi there, my name's Vanilla, but you know that and I know that. Today, I don't even know if I believe what I'm talking about. We're looking at a ROM hack, but that's nothing new. But what is new is that I think it's probably the worst hack ever made. It's called Pokemon Indigo, and just to be clear, this is a hack that was released like last month. There are a surprising amount of other projects that go by Indigo as well, but they have nothing to do with any of this. You may say,
Vanilla, you can't say that about a project that someone made. Even if it's not objectively good, you still shouldn't talk like that.
I don't think I've ever been mean or unfair towards a project, even if it wasn't my cup of tea. Sure, I'm not going to sit here and glaze everything I play because I'm here to share my thoughts and be honest about how I feel, but this hack, it's bad. As per usual, I was partaking in my obligatory scrolling on Reddit and I saw a post for a new project. As I was going through the carousel and looking at the screenshots, I was like, man, something about this looks wrong, like way wrong. This project boasts over 100 fakemon to catch, but anyone looking at this for more than 5 seconds is going to notice that they look crunchy and unnaturally messy. I'm definitely not a snob when it comes to graphics, especially when they're custom for the project. I love when folks put in a lot of effort into what they create. However, the images of these fakemon, and I hesitate to even call them that, were generated by ChatGPT. Now you may say,
You can't just accuse everyone of using AI. That's harmful.
I guess if I went around saying that every image that has a certain style is AI generated, that would be an issue. But the great thing is that other folks clocked it in the comments as well, and they were demanding that the OP answer about whether or not AI was used in the development process. Every single comment was ignored, and no response was given. That was until the thread was locked, and only then did OP quickly divulge the fact that they had used AI to generate sprites for all 100 plus fakemon. That Reddit post has since been obliterated, like completely nuked, but yours truly still has a screen recording because I'm cool like that. Let's take a look at some of these comments because I think it's like a little window that gives us a glimpse at the thought process of some players. Plus, I'm always up for some tea. I was so happy to see the amount of folks opposing the use of Gen AI. Thankfully, it seems that most of us haven't lost the plot just yet. I'm not going to read those comments because then I would be repeating myself, so let's look at some of the comments that are in favor of OP's use of AI. Someone writes,
I don't see the problem with OP using AI to help with the sprites. Not everyone is an artist. This allowed OP to focus on making the game with their original music as well.
Two things here. OP didn't get help making the sprites. ChatGPT literally did all of that. Secondly, OP decided to ship the game without their custom music because it was crashing the game. If it was so integral to the experience, why would you publish the hack without it? The commenter then goes on to say,
It's okay to steal IP but not use AI to generate the sprites? The hypocrisy in these downvotes is pathetic. This is the future of game development, especially for solo devs. It's time to get over it.
How about no?
maybe this is just poorly executed rage bait. If not, I guess my downvote makes me a pathetic hypocrite. That's fine. Add that to my growing list of titles. I think it's terrible to say that using AI for creative aspects of game dev is going to be the future, especially if you're doing it solo. I always bring him up because he's a huge inspiration to me, but Concerned Ape, also known as Eric, developed Stardew Valley all by himself. It took a very long time, but he was dedicated and learned how to do every single part of the development process in order to achieve his goals. Some may say,
Well, when Concerned Ape was developing Stardew Valley, AI wasn't a thing, so who's to say he wouldn't use it if he could?
well, I'm so glad you asked. I looked at an article published by Lewis White on Fervor. Is that how you say that? Which talked about an interview Eric did with Game Informer where he talked about his stance on AI. Eric stated, "You're offloading creativity to an algorithm," which I think is always going to undermine the pure and authentic human element of what you're doing. So for me, as someone who wants to express myself in an artistic way, I wouldn't ever want to use AI for any sort of creative thing because it's beside the point of what I'm doing. My goal is to express myself in a creative way. Why would I let an AI do that for me? He then goes on to say, "At the very least, let another human being express themselves if you need help." That's probably what I would say. There are plenty of humans out there that would like an opportunity to express themselves. That was said so eloquently, it's gonna make me look really bad when I try to say the same thing. Going back to the ROM hack, the thing that kills me is that most of the generated images don't even look like they could be Pokemon. I'm not here to harp on folks who think that their skills aren't good enough to create something that they would like to see, but that's just not an excuse to use AI to generate images. I would prefer to have less polished assets rather than the result of prompts spit out by an AI any day. When I talk about anti-AI stuff, stuff, my biggest concern is the process that occurs between the thought and the desired result. In this case, I think OP may have thought, I don't believe I'm able to create art that people will think is good enough, so I'm just gonna offload that part of the process to AI so that way it is something others would want to see. Obviously, this is just based off of what I believe. The initial reasoning isn't important though, because no one asked you to generate fakemon. In fact, I would argue, who wants to see over 100 creatures that don't have hardly any resemblance to a Pokemon? Fakemon are a bit of a hard sell to begin with, and now folks need to worry about them being generated slop. An AI can know what a Pokemon is, understand the concept of a fakemon, and regurgitate the process to make a fakemon, and it will still be unable to create one. The fact that these fakemon are cursed has nothing to do with the skill of the prompter. It has everything to do with the fact that creating is more than just the end result. Everything that happens in between is arguably the most important part of the process. I'm always interested in the why, and the only rationale given for creating fakemon is OP says that they always gravitate towards the same Pokemon. I'm sure there are pre-made fakemon that other artists have created, so why not just ask permission to use them and then credit the artist? A lot of the time, sprite artists will grant permission with credit, no need to pay. I just don't understand why we turn to ChatGPT to generate images. Oh wait, that's because we didn't have to. Duh. I should mention that this post talks a bit about OP's daughter and how this hack was created in part so that way she would be able to play without too much assistance, which I actually think is a great idea. I love that concept, especially for younger kids, and I think you can actually see it in the map design, where the maps are much more linear than you might normally see for a Pokemon game, and it's less story focused with less dialogue. For young elementary school students, they're right at that point where reading on their own is still a bit difficult and their reasoning and problem solving is still being developed. So I think, and I'm absolutely not qualified whatsoever to talk about this, that this is a great way to go about addressing this gap in knowledge. While I played, I felt like it was designed with the intention of it being played by a younger child, and that's a big positive. That's probably the best part about this hack. While I'm beyond frustrated about the use of Gen AI in Indigo, I guess the thing that bothers me almost more than that is the disclaimer that OP added only when the thread was locked. They wrote, "Given that this was a goofy project I made for my own enjoyment and not for any money or recognition, I didn't realize the use of AI would be the defining factor." I'm sorry. What do you mean you didn't realize this would be the defining factor? Oh my god. I said this earlier, but like when you make a hack that uses fakemon, the thing that is front and center are the fakemon. The post also mentions there being many fakemon to choose from that have various typings, and that care was put into balancing them. So I think OP actually skipped over the fact that they themselves chose to make the fakemon the defining feature. I saw comments that were like, oh, it's free and they're not making any money off of it anyway, so who cares that they're using generated images? Or you all are getting upset about the use of AI but don't care that ROM hacks steal the Pokemon IP. That second point is ridiculous. Creating fan projects isn't stealing. Selling fan art isn't stealing. But you know what is stealing? Using an AI to generate images, because AI is trained off of the work of non-consenting artists. Are we really trying to absolve OP of blame because they weren't doing this for any money or recognition? Inherently, the most important part of your project is built off the backs of other artists without their permission. In my opinion, it's worse than tracing without the artist's consent, because at least at that point, you're able to credit the individual whose work you copied and tried to pass off as your own if you get called out. The only thing you can credit here is ChatGPT. I don't think not being artistically inclined is an excuse for sloppy work either. I think just about anyone can look at these sprites and see that they're chopped. Their outlines are uneven, their proportions are bizarre, and there's no consistent color palette. I was scratching my head for a minute to try to figure out if they were too big when they were generated and they were sized down, or if they were too small and scaled up. AI strives for perfection, so there's no way it would have spit out something so garbled on its own. I decided, since you can't steal from AI, that I would take the time to try to salvage a few of the sprites, and I've been showing my workflow on screen. I'm obviously no sprite artist, just a noob, but even with just a little bit of cleanup, it transforms the designs. Some things that I noticed were that there was no thought in balancing the sizing of the Pokemon. Joel Terrier looks ginormous in its sprite, but is only 1 foot tall. And then other ones that should be the size of humans are very, very small. But I suppose it might be too much to expect one sole prompter to take that into consideration. All the designs are uninspired. I can't imagine what would have contributed to that. I mean, look at the tree. Even the fruits somehow have that samey AI face. This caterpillar which is gargantuan I'd like to point out, also has that same smile somehow, and it's not an example of consistency, it's just the signature AI cartoon face. The way the project looks is probably one of the most important parts of a hack, whether that's deciding to use the sprites that come with the base game you're building off of, or using a completely different tile set. After that, what's left? Map design, story writing, team building and balancing, and music? Team building and balancing is important, but OP states that they're not really difficulty inclined, which, like, same, but I assume it takes a bit more time to properly balance a more competitive-oriented hack. Map design is a time-consuming endeavor as well, as is just about every part when you're developing a project from the ground up, but when you're willing to offload one aspect of the development process to AI and you didn't share that fact at the start, who's to say you didn't have AI assist with other parts as well? For those who said it was okay to have AI generate the sprites, would it also be okay if certain chunks of dialogue were generated by AI? What if the outline for the plot was also AI assisted? At what point does it become more of the AI's project rather than the individual prompting it? If the prompter does give the AI an idea of what to do, and then the AI executes the request, that's the AI's work. It may just be my bias, but I don't really trust that AI didn't touch anything else in the hack. I don't think it's just the art. I'm very suspicious of some of the Pokédex entries as well. They seem to follow a very rigid pattern, which AI loves. AI also loves using tons of adjectives, which most of these entries have a few too many of. Here are a few examples. Gliding beneath the water, it uses its powerful claws to trap prey. Its slick body secretes a toxic film. As this mysterious Pokemon roams snowy mountains on its long, powerful legs, its thick fur shields it from the cold. Its two heads chatter constantly in cheerful harmony. Its long tail helps it to balance as it skips along. It's not that these patterns on their own are indicative of AI, they're perfectly normal. It's when you start putting them all together along with the use of AI for other parts of the project that things start looking a bit suspicious. I'm not going to play through this hack solely because I would have to try to bond with Pokemon that I know weren't made with thought and care. They're all just approximations on what an algorithm thinks a fakemon should look like based off of some keywords. I don't want to put the time and effort into breaking down what the gym battles were like or what the story was. You may ask then, what's the point of even making a video about a hack you're not going to play? Well, I think this may be the very first instance of Gen AI being used in the development of creative assets in a Pokemon ROM hack. I definitely don't think it's going to be the last, so I think it's important for someone to say something about it and make everyone aware that it is something we need to watch for. I also want to make my case that we shouldn't be rolling over for these folks who want to hide behind AI to do things they can't do. What is the point in publishing a project that you can only take partial credit for? The majority of the credit needs to go to the AI you prompted an absurd amount of times to get a satisfactory result. Instead of using AI, it could have been a great opportunity to reach out to someone in the community who may have already made assets and ask them if it would be okay to feature their work. But no, instead of giving the chance to a living, breathing creative, you decided to go to ChatGPT instead. I assume because it was so much more convenient. I am almost certain that it would have been faster to go out of your way to contact artists rather than fight the AI to get the result you were looking for. If the project you wanted to create was too much work for someone working solo, maybe the scope should have been adjusted accordingly. Then shortcuts wouldn't have to be taken. If you're not capable of doing what you want using your own skill, maybe you're just not meant to do it quite yet. I think what was the most important goal of this hack, and keep in mind, just like everything else, this is just my opinion, is that a hack was completed. And that's it. It didn't matter how it got there. All that mattered was that it was playable. And that's sad. It's so odd walking through a region that I'm unsure of what was created by a human and what was generated by an algorithm. On the surface, everything seems relatively fine, but when you get into battles, that all falls apart. Both the trainers and their companions don't look right. There are just artifacts everywhere that show that a human didn't make it, because why would a human choose these colors together or put details in certain places? It is completely normal to look at something and say, is that supposed to be like that? It's important to keep calling these things out because otherwise folks don't get called out for not being completely honest. We should never stop requiring the disclosure of AI being used because there's so much value that you get from creating art as a human being, and that shouldn't be buried under AI generated slop pretending to be created by a human. Don't waste your time even thinking about playing this seriously. It's not worth the data you use to download it. That being said, I would like to know what you all think about this whole situation. How do you feel about the use of AI to make parts of a ROM hack? Obviously, I'm mortified, but what about you? Hopefully, I will not have to make another video about an AI generated ROM hack, and this will be the only one of its kind, but I'm not too confident that's going to be the case. But anyway, if you enjoyed this video that was created by a living creature and not AI, it would be amazing if you could consider giving it a like and maybe subscribing. Your support means so much, and it lets me know that you all like what I'm making. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your day and choosing to spend it with me. I hope to see you again next time. Okay, bye.